It seems as if we are failing when it comes to articulating a logical explanation for the problem of evil, and particularly child suffering. I was posed with the question, why does God allow children to be mistreated even to the point of death? This is probably one of the hardest and most emotional topics to deal with in Christian apologetics. It is extremely important to understand discussing this topic with someone just exploring questions regarding God is going to be different than talking to someone who went through an unspeakable tragedy. Regardless of who we are speaking to, we are obligated to approach this with a loving kindness because of the weight of this topic. Now, when we ask, why does God allow child suffering and death? We are essentially implying on one side there is an evil person or persons, and on the other side there is a grave injustice in the suffering of the innocent child, and God overall is allowing or permitting and even accepting these actions and events. Let's examine these implications. God is referred to a multitude of times in the Bible as Father. Now, if a father gives his son the free will to play football and he gets a broken leg from a bad fellow player who is jealous of him, did the father allow this to happen? Or is this a consequence of freedom? Now, the father could shut down all of his child's freedom and keep him in a padded safe room where he would never experience any danger. But is that good for the child? So we are forced to ask, is the evil in the world an allowance of God, or is it a consequence of free will? Free will is not always a satisfying answer to God supposedly allowing a child to suffer, but it is important to recognize the consequences of freedom. Now, on the other side, if we can presuppose God can stop child suffering, then how do we know he has not done so a million times in the past? And the ones that the suffering happened to, he was there helping them through to embrace them in his arms and erase the pain and horrible memories. And this would serve a purpose in the future, like stopping the same atrocity on a far greater level. We can rest assured it is more likely God knew what free will would lead to and provide a mechanism to help the innocent through horrible times. We can imply that God is a cold, cruel, hidden being who dumped a bunch of creatures on a planet, then ignored them. But the problem with this lies in Jesus. Who suffered more than Jesus? God entering creation and suffering one of the most horrible tortures in human history on every level, emotional, physical. He was betrayed by his friends, abandoned, and tortured to death. God has never been distant from our suffering. He has been a part of it. He knew what free will would bring. Every human is going to have to experience suffering, and worse, we may have to experience the suffering of those we love. We can also, in regards to child suffering, ask the question, what is worse? This argument is presented by atheists who question theism. But wait, if there is no God, a child horribly mistreated and dies, and what happens? Is there any justice? Is there any peace? There is nothing. These creatures go into the same compost pile as the saintly Mother Teresa or Adolf Hitler. The only thing worse than a child being tormented is nothing beyond. We can say we have a tough time explaining God, but I would rather think of a child in the arms of Jesus than into bleak nothingness, where there is no justice or peace for the suffering soul, and no justice to the evil person who caused the suffering. If we try to put all this together, we can say that God created a system where people with free will are allowed to manipulate their environment any way they choose. Within that system, horrible things happen to innocent creatures. God does not allow this any more than a parent allows his son to get a broken leg in sports. We can believe God can stop evil, then we can also believe that he has many times in the past. And those who had to experience such horror, there was an overall unseen reason. A woman molested as a child grows up and starts an organization to battle child sex trafficking. Her efforts lead to the arrests of thousands of predators, saving countless kids from being kidnapped and abused. God knew we would suffer because he suffered with us, and far worse than most of humanity could ever imagine. We can trust in God to provide answers, and even when it seems he doesn't, we can rest assured all suffering, no matter how bad, is temporary and small next to eternity.